Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here. Welcome to the full moon transmission. It is October 20th, 2021. We have our Aries full moon happening today at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So just in, not even a half hour away. So in true Andromedan starseed fashion, I am on my own timeline and I will speak when I am damn well ready to do so. So welcome back, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you to all of the people who have subscribed, who like these videos, who comment. I love the comments. I love the conversation. I learned so much from the interaction, so as well as other people. So keep them coming, and thank you for those who share this content as well. I had a client yesterday that I was working with who I've done a lot of starseed work with, and she told me that she actually found my video in the way that it was meant to be. It was recommended on her feed, and that's how she found me. And then there was some other synchronous things that came about in terms of the fact that we were listening to another podcast, a different influencer, a different podcast, and which is a very niche kind of thing. And so that was this person's signal that they had found the right place. So when you do subscribe and you comment, you like, you share, you do all of the things that interact with this content, it actually does make a difference. So thank you. And if you're new here, it's so great to have you here. Thanks for stopping by. And of course, all of that same stuff applies to you as well. But of course, take your time, feel it out, see if it resonates with you, because there is no shortage of people who are offering information, offering guidance, offering their perspective that we can all learn from. But at the end of the day, it really does boil down to what is in your gut and what do how are you oriented towards truth? What perspectives, what types of information, what types of experiences orient you, like I said, to truth. So take your time, figure it out. There's nothing new under the sun, so it's really about putting the pieces of the puzzle together. So how is everyone doing on this full moon? I'm gonna check in, make sure the stream is going well, and just want to touch base with people, see how you're doing, how you're feeling. There's certainly a spark happening. There's an energetic type of spark right now. I'm wondering how people are feeling in terms of their sleep. The Schumann's been pretty mellow. We'll look at that. There's not so much going on. The solar weather is pretty mellow. There's some interesting things coming to the surface, almost literally. And I'm going to share with you today, again, just facts, right? We're just looking at dots. We're just looking at dots, and it's up to each of us individually to connect them. And that's what the astrology represents as well. They are just points on a graph, right? Points on a geometric graph that we get to make the choice of how we're going to connect those dots and what trajectory are we going to follow? What resonance are we going to follow as we connect those dots? And that's what astrology is for. Right? Everything has a frequency, everything has a vibration. The very essence of the universe is on a time, functions in a wave. It's in a wave function. So, and of course, what's going on up here and then making its way out is certainly being impacted, at least for me. Third house is late Aries for me, right? This full moon's right on the cusp of my third house. And if you've had starseed astrology with me or anyone else, then you know that house cusps factor into these starseed markings. So I got my third house cusp right there. The Placidus house system, at least, is right on Andromeda galaxy or vertex, right? So this is where this full moon is, direct conjunction with vertex and the Andromeda galaxy. So freedom. But one thing to keep in mind is that you can't separate any of these archetypal symbols from their converse or the polarity point, as we're going to see in today's reading. At the heart of it, I'm very excited to be able to offer it, even though it does. The readings lately have been a very consistent showing of what could happen if we are not aware and intentional about what we're doing, and certainly giving a snapshot too energetically of the moment here of where the collective energy is kind of flowing. And again, that is up to us in terms of how we relate to it. And one thing here that has been coming through very strongly, and this is not exactly this mind-blowing revelation here, but is coming to the surface very, very distinctly with this full moon, is that nothing that we do is in a vacuum, and nothing that we do as individuals is truly separated from how it impacts the rest of everything else. Like, we are interlinked with each other and with nature, with the world around us. And so every decision, every thought, everything that we act on, it has its own signature, its own frequency, its own vibration. And I know these words are so overplayed at this point that we kind of just like gloss over when somebody says them, like energy or frequency or vibration. But we got to bring it back to what these really represents, which is our actual actions, the thoughts that we give our attention to and our focus to, and where we put our focus in terms of our behavior and in terms of our action and our choices, right? Those are, every moment is a choice, right? In terms of where we focus our attention, where we focus our actions and our behavior. But nothing is separate. Nothing is separate from each other. And we have to accept at some level that for as much as we want to be free, and true freedom will come from every single individual being their own unique node in this beautiful geometric pattern that we recognize as life here in this physical universe. Every individual is their own sovereign node. And if each of us is in full alignment with our true selves, then there is the possibility of global freedom for a society to be at peace and balanced with the universe, be at one with everything else in the universe. And that's a very Arcturian notion here in terms of starseed astrology and what these star origins represent for us, or what they could represent. And of course, Mars is in conjunction with Arcturus. The sun is just within 3 degrees, so it's still be in conjunction with Arcturus right now at all as well. There's no separating our actions, our behaviors, our choices from the impact it has on the whole. And part of maturing into a sovereign being and is to take responsibility for that, to take true responsibility for what we put out there and how it impacts, and to be able to take the feedback. That's also part of the process as well. So each of us is getting this opportunity with the full moon right now to show that, yes, we are surrounded by all manner of the community, the collective, the spiritual essence that is surrounding us. We're never alone. But the other side of that is that when we express ourselves as individuals, and with a moon in Aries, that certainly is about expressing ourselves emotionally through our subjective experience of I am. There's a maturity that's needed when we have to face the criticism of those that we have been put in a position to perform for instance, right? That's just a really loose way to put it. That eventually it has actual ramifications. It has actual an energetic signature to it. And if we promise more than we can actually deliver, we have to be mature enough to be able to handle the criticism, to be able to handle the feedback. And that's, from other people, from the universe in general, right? From the social context that we find ourselves in. And so, I've talked about this already, bold expression, and perhaps a very, very overwhelming expression with this full moon. But it's also going to show us each, and collectively as well, but since it's the moon, it's a very personalized experience. It's we have the opportunity to see what has been working in this lunar cycle so far with this new moon in Libra, that is having us set intentions to grow within that still point, right? So you don't want to act too drastically in one way or the other. You want to find that still point that is the fulcrum of a dynamic process of balancing these scales. But we also need, part of that is, if we're going to accept and express ourselves, right? This is the sun, finding our sustainment and our fulfillment through the recognition that we are surrounded, that we are never alone. It also means that we each individually, and those who have really pushed the envelope in terms of their own actualization, their own needs, their own desires, right? Because Aries is about the ego consciousness, and the ego that just allows for self-preservation and survival. It's an important part of the human psyche. It's the beginning. It's the beginning of the whole zodiacal wheel, is Aries, or the lamb. But we also, as we move closer into Taurus, we have to accept and be willing to have the maturity to accept the feedback. And so the universe and the larger social context of life right now will provide in some ways that feedback. So we get to see what's working. We also get to see what hasn't been working. And the full moon is a great time to release these things, right? To give them back over, to recognize what we've learned from them, and then release them, just like a detox, right? You see what's not working for your body, and then you commit to letting go and flushing out what is working against you. And this is what we're going to see with this full moon, collectively and also individually. We're all going to have this experience in some way. So again, it's important to understand where these things are happening in your natal chart, what your progressions show you in terms of your own evolution along that blueprint. And we each have a choice in every moment. So, to have this right in my third house, it's along the ninth and third house axis of knowledge and understanding. So it's one thing to understand something and to understand that we're, I'm just giving you an example here, understand that we are surrounded by all of these spiritual forces, that we're never alone. And even in a communal context, we have each other, like we're never alone. But that also comes back to a very intuitive relationship with knowledge and what's in my immediate environment, right? Your ninth house is the collective paradigm, the social values that we have come to all adhere to as a belief system, right? And the law, right, of our society. This is all the ninth house. And so larger, foreign travel, higher education, these are all ways that we broaden our horizons, literally, right? Broaden the horizons. You get the big picture and you understand what it is that holds us all together, what we can create together. But the third house is what's right in front of you. How does your nervous system work? How do you learn? How do you speak? How do you communicate? Like, how do you actually function in the world right in front of you? And that often will relate to people like siblings or your cousins or your neighbors in your commute, like the movement on a daily basis and the functioning of your nervous system. And we talked about this yesterday, right? How the nervous system is an electrical system, how the Kundalini is based on the chi that's held in the blood. And so the releasing of that is very much a movement of that biopsychic energy that's carried in the blood, for instance. So our nervous system is an electrical system, and this is what the third house, for instance, represents. So this axis, we're all going to have it along this some axis in our chart right now of where this full moon. So also showing in terms of my immediate environment, how I'm feeling about that. And with the Andromeda nature, right, there's such a strong tendency to, again, really be on your own time, to really call out people who are gaslighting and emotionally manipulating, to not be involved in that process. And at every given turn, to be free, to always be free, and to put that as your primary motivation. But at the same time, when you see the larger picture, all right, of what we're all understanding together is that we're never alone, right? We're never alone. We have each other, but that does mean that we have to take some responsibility for how our actions, how our behaviors, and how our emoting may impact the whole. And that's because we're never alone, right? That's the converse of it. So let's look at, first of all, we're going to look at just some interesting dots here in the real world so that we can just look at things that are surfacing, right? And things that are surfacing, literally surfacing, because the things are shaking. The world is shaking. So let's look at that real quick here. So that's our chart. So we're not going to start there, of course. We're going to start, well, first of all, I want to show you the Schumann, because it's been so, look at it, it's just so mellow, right? There was this amplitude on the 18th. We saw that when Mercury and Jupiter stationed direct. Yesterday, pretty mellow. Today, pretty mellow. Now, there is, the coronal hole stream, we're kind of exiting it, but there was an increase in the solar wind speed and the density, and there's more to share about that, but you can see here, even the quality certainly went up, but you can even see here, it's just mellow, right? It's just mellow for the most part. So, but the thing I really want to show you is we're going to look at some earthquakes again, and then I'm going to show you a headline from yesterday about these earthquakes. So you can see here again, the west coast of the U.S. Is really, there's a lot of small rumblings. There's a lot going on in Alaska, and we've talked about this too, that this ring of fire is pretty active for the most part. There's that big earthquake over in Greece. There was another one in this area. But what we're going to find here is... well, they updated it. Where is this one? Even over here, again, Indonesia, Australia, this whole area of the Ring of Fire, getting close to Antarctica. Let's see, I want to make sure you can see it. Yep. This is all pretty active, but here is what I want to show you. So as you go down, you can see the little 3.8, 2.8 all around in this area, right? California, Idaho, Alaska. But here's the Solomon Islands. We got Indonesia. We're getting up into the 4 and 5 range. Russia, right? Again, this is all in this Ring of Fire area, but this is where it starts to get interesting. And here, right here, we're looking closer to China. And there was another one in Greece. I get so fascinated with this. Okay, so here's what's interesting. So Japan, right? Here's one, 4.5, Japan. Here is... that's Texas. Let's see here. What else do we have? Here's another one. Japan, 4.5. This is earlier. We're going backwards in time. And there were more, right? There were more in Japan. So what I want to show you in this moment here, it's just a dot, right? It's just a dot to pay attention to. That's all it is. But let's look at this headline that I saw from yesterday. Undersea volcano. Remember that, undersea volcano, underwater volcano, and related tectonic activity near the Ogasawara Island, oh my God, I butchered that, chain in Japan, has raised the island of Iwo Jima, exposing a fleet of partially sunken World War II ships, okay? Raised the island of Iwo Jima. Sounds to me like things from the past coming to the surface. Things from under the water coming to our awareness. Oh, the moon, that represents... oh, it does, doesn't it? The moon represents our hidden realms, our subconscious, the waters within. What could possibly be coming to the surface that we may see with this full moon today? That's very interesting. So, there's all kinds of things that we could relate to this, of course, but I just it came across my awareness and I wanted to share it because of all of those earthquakes that are registering over in Japan. And of course, like I said, all over the Pacific Northwest, Northern California, all the way up into Alaska is pretty active these days in terms of tectonic activity. So I wonder what could surface in other areas where there are underwater volcanoes, tectonic activity, seismic activity under the water. And remember who we had, or what we had, I should say, for yesterday's reading at the heart was the high priestess, wasn't it? Right, the moon, right? Our inner wisdom. So full moons, full illumination, full reflection from the sun's light of what otherwise is embedded under the surface, hidden in our subconscious, something that we stuff away unless we are actively working on these realms within ourselves on a regular basis. So let's get into the reading for today. And okay, I might have to step away to stoke the fire. So, which is why I'm out in my living room and not in my office, because we still have no heat. Next week we'll have that new furnace installed, and for now it's just wood stove action, which I'm pretty okay with, honestly. I'd prefer to be in my office, but it's so cold and I like the fire, so I'm gonna stick with it. So let's see here. Didn't sleep, too much to think about and process. Yeah, dude, Emily, I was up at 2 a.m. this morning, and I've been getting woken up at anywhere between 2 and 3 a.m. for night after night. So I'm also one of those people that can usually fall to sleep very quickly. And so I do fall back asleep, and then I have incredible and vivid dreams at that point once I wake up and go back to sleep. And there's something about that 3 to 5 a.m. in the brain and the neurochemistry that is like really, really potent for stuff. And so I hope, Emily, I hope you're doing well, and that you're awake because you're excited about what you're processing and not anxious and in dread necessarily, although there is a lot to be concerned about. So, but I've also been waking up, and with the full moon, it's no surprise. I mean, it's just gleaming like this huge ball of light in the night sky. It's kind of hard to sleep when you have that like shining into your window and into your life. I totally feel that. Here we go. So this reading is very interesting because it's really, again, it's leading us. We have, some really strong signal here at the heart of the matter with the Lovers, but we're going to start here again with our Princess of Swords in reverse, and showing where this can go if we don't take responsibility for how our actions and our behaviors, and that stem from our emotions, by the way, how they impact other people and how they impact the full range of the collective context that we're finding ourselves in and expressing ourselves through, right? It's one thing to acknowledge and to have this inner assurance that we're all taken care of, that we're never alone, that we're surrounded, that we have each other, right? That we have, and it's growing larger and larger of humanity coming together and supporting each other. Right? Mass walkouts on jobs, mass firings, all of these types of things. People that are just like, no, but, and it goes both ways. I'm not suggesting that, we all have to feel guilty about something necessarily. It's just, it is what it is, right? It's what we put into the situation that's going to bring up what it is that we need to, come to terms with, that we need to accept, and that we have to take some responsibility for the objective reality for this situation, because we are surrounded and we are all taking care of each other. Like there's no getting out of that relationship of the collective. And so the Arcturian nature also is very, very, it's interesting how much the Arcturian nature is so opposite naturally from the Andromedan galaxy nature, because one is completely focused on the expression of self, the expression of self and the social revolution that comes out of a real strong connection to being, actualizing the subjective experience in its fullness at every given moment, which is important, but also too that we can't lose sight of the fact that we can't just act narcissistically about whatever we want, or even get hyper focused on what's going to impact us personally in this short window of time, because it still impacts. And this is where karma comes from, right? So the Arcturian nature does speak to the wisdom that goes along with the remaining in balance and developing and systems and designing systems or structures or even our own lives to be in cosmic balance, right? We want to be in cosmic balance, at peace with the whole. Okay, so and this reading is really about what it is if we don't accept this and if we feel like we're in lack, because this will ultimately lead to us, back into that escapism. So first we have the Princess of Swords, right? And she is definitely reversed in this situation. So, this is not a very, it doesn't age well. Venus, when she's reversed, the Princess of Swords, it's not a very good look. So her logic can be very destructive, right? She's certainly impulsive and curious and very serious about the information and the use of knowledge, and her logic is very sharp, which is why it can be so destructive, right? Remember, Venus is amazing in the night sky right now. If you haven't seen, even in the last 2 days, I mean, it's so bright, and she's still hovering very close to Antares, which you can see too if the sky is dark enough. It's very difficult with the full moon, but wow, it's pretty striking. And so Venus, remember, she devours the object of her desire on the darkest side of things. So in this reversal, we are seeing the darker side of Venus, which is very much about us being, or other people, right? Actual people being hyper-focused on the object of our desire and using our logic to destroy everything else. So we can show, this card really can show the characteristics. Remember, it's the princess, not the queen. The princess can show characteristics of a child who lacks morality, right? And nobility. It's very much like, I want what I want, and I'm going to use my my knowledge of things and my sharp and very serious logical weapons in order to do so. So there can be a lot of stubbornness with this card, a lot of cruelty with this card. This is our causal factor here, showing a lot of aggression when results are not to our liking when you have this card. So there's a lot of impulsiveness and curiosity and seriousness, but also on the downside here, in the inversion, malicious and cruel and spiteful. And here's the most important thing: failure to recognize facts. When we are unable to see things for what they are, and we cannot take responsibility for how we may have participated in creating that through our own expression of self, just as a self-preservation mode, this is where the Princess of Swords really shows that maliciousness, that cruel, that spiteful behavior, and certainly a failure to recognize facts. So this is the causal factor coming into this moment. I'm not saying that we're all doing this. I'm just saying that many people are embodying this particular symbolic representation right now and bringing it into the heart of the moment, which in fact is the Lovers card. We haven't seen this in a while. So number 6 in the major arcana, or the trump cards as they are called. You can see here's the cosmic egg right in the center. You have all of this oppositional energy that's coming together, right? It's not merging. That is Sagittarius, where it merges. It's rendered into its most pure form and then is synthesized into something completely new. That's Sagittarius. In Gemini, which is what this card represents, the Lovers card, it is a coming together and reconciliation of opposites. Man, we've been talking about this for a while because this is the 6. or the sextile in astrology, that 60-degree angle. You're coming together, the opposite points coming together, and you see the cosmic egg at the center. So there's something here in this imagery that's very much connected now to where Saturn is in Aquarius moving in its direct. You see this overarching kind of faceless, towering God figure, right? That's sanctioning this union, right? What's interesting is that this darker figure has the fiery flame of crown, and then this figure that's lighter and has the blonde hair has the moon, right? The same high priestess, right? That had the moon at the top. So you see all of this imagery, all of this. And then you have the cherub at the top that's shooting the arrow, which is a very Sagittarian thing, the archer, but it's coming down, right? It's shooting down. Again, here's the woman, and the man, and they're coming together, and it's sanctioned, right? It's a sanctioned union. So at the heart here is this combination of contrasts, right? And Venus and Mars coming together, for instance, or the sun and the moon coming together, for instance. This is the Gemini card. So it represents the alchemy of the universe. You have to start with the opposing points coming and facing each other and accepting their reconciliation or their union. Of course, the lovers can represent literal coming together of two people in a marriage, but it's really representative of the universal alchemy, right? The first part of it, which is the recognition that there is me and then there is not me, right? And with Aries, you haven't even gotten to that point. It's just the me in Aries, which is important because that's how we all start, is just I am that I am, right? When we start growing, it's the first house on the astrological wheel. It's the first sign of the zodiac is Aries. So what else this represents is saying goodbye to something in the past and commitment to love, commitment to this diplomacy, commitment to this reconciliation. And the commitment part is what's important. So it's about being honest and making a clear decision for what? For love, right? Diplomacy instead of war. And this is, boy, oh boy, this comes into I'm thinking about so many things right now in terms of the way that we've been divided, the way that we have been shuffled into a mindset or a perspective of a war, of how we are in a war. We're in a war for our consciousness. We're in a war, an information war. We are in the throes of the shadow net, still actively working to divide us into these two camps on every level, right? It doesn't matter what opposite you want to work, what polarity you want to work with. You can find something in the realm of mainstream news, social media, whatever, that's anything that is not a truly internalized organic creation that is separate from all this stuff is going to try its damnedest to create this division somewhere. So devotion, trust, and optimism are a big part of this card. So this is the heart here, right? We are being brought together, and this full moon is fully showing us right now the pathway to this commitment of the alchemy of the universe, to be diplomatic instead of warlike, which is very interesting because Mars in Libra is the diplomat in conjunction with Arcturus today. There is so much coming in right now that is leading our awareness to this diplomacy, to this commitment to love, to the alchemy, and being honest with ourselves and being honest with those who we are committing to finding some sort of reconciliation with, whatever it is. So this is the heart. Now, remember what the causal factor is, right? The reverse Princess of Swords, right? The destructive logic, the maliciousness, the spitefulness, all of the stubborn, cruel, and immature, childlike nature that comes forward when when things are not working out the way we want them or think they should work out, right? Just like when we get attached to these concepts or these ideas. Remember we talked about Chiron in a new position in Aries right now, in Aries, right? A new traditional images are given new meaning with new symbols, right? And how Chiron is going to make this very difficult for many of us to accept the new symbolic representation of that which had held a lot of significance in a different way, in a different cycle. Again, saying goodbye to those things and accepting and committing and devoting ourselves to the reconciliation in an act of I guess, in a concurrent act with the alchemy of the universe, right? Which is being presented to us with all of this Arcturian nature, with the sun and Mars in particular. So, but remember what's coming from the causal factor in our consciousness that's coming into this moment, because it's going to make a lot of sense with how this all turns out, because it doesn't seem very good at first, but it's showing us what could be if we don't make a change. The Queen of Keys reversed is where we're drawing our power. So again, being somebody or embodying the identity of someone or having someone in our life that we really rely upon that is not providing any kind of authority or confidence on our material wealth or reality. And there can be a serious emotional distancing from who this person represents or who this person is and what they represent to us. So an emotional distancing from a person or a woman of authority or our own inner authority to be confident in our material reality, inner resources. We may be thinking of leaving a job or a career that no longer is in resonance. Well, you can see a lot of that happening, but this is still... this still feels more to me like a loss of power, right? And if you look at the rest of the reading, it's very congruent with that. A loss of power, a distancing from a sense of being confident and secure in being able to hold resources, to bring resources to us. This is definitely us feeling this as we are turned upside down, right? Or someone in our life is not providing this level of authority or confidence in our material reality anymore. So either way, and in a global collective sense too, right? People, especially women in positions of authority right now, when we have relied upon them, not actually really able to step into a position of responsibility for what they hold for the rest of us. Either way, this is subconsciously in action. This is where we're drawing our power subconsciously. We're thinking about the moon again. And so somebody who is supposed to be in a position of authority, who is not taking responsibility for how their actions objectively affect other people. It's just subjective when this, especially with this in reversal. So this is really where we're drawing a lot of our power from, and can draw a lot of our power from right now, or a sense of what is under, behind the scenes, under the surface, maybe we're not quite aware of, but at least with the full moon, we have a moment where we get to see it in its entirety, even though it is often what is buried under the surface that we don't really acknowledge on a regular basis. This is what the moon, but it still impacts us all the time, right? The moon is still, our feelings are still here no matter what. It's just, we don't often give a lot of attention to the mechanisms of that. And then they just kind of lead us around, or subconsciously we're being programmed, or, being directed in a lot of ways, in ways we don't even realize, right? And I think that's something very key. And I'm going to share with you at the end, an example of that. So we also see here that I popped over to the chat, and Alex K says the same. He's waking up every night around 1 to 3 for the past few days. Yep, there's something that is being brought to our awareness, especially as the moon's gotten more full and more full and more full. It's just like waking up, and it's like sometimes you have to wake up to almost like prime yourself to go back into that dream state with a different level of awareness, and it's very interesting. And of course, with the moon being so full, it's really hard to stay in that space. It's very disruptive. So as we move up the vertical axis of our power here's our 6 of Forces, also reversed, okay? Also reversed. So again, our attention focused here on what we don't, what's not working, feeling disempowered, feeling like a loss of authority, emotionally reactive, life turned upside down, all of the things that this represents, giving our power away. Again, right? Not being one of those, not being able to critique those who, are supposed to be responsible for managing, in the administration and all the other things that go along with what the government is supposed to represent, right? It's really just a body of people who are elected to take care of the administration of everything that we need as a society. So giving our power away to that as if we've all done this. This is why we're here now, is because we continually do this. So our attention definitely focused on this too right now. Giving our power away, following another agenda without realizing it. Boy, oh boy. I mean, the layers and layers and layers of this is astounding to me. And every layer that I peel back and realize is frightening, right? How easily we get pulled back in ways that we think are organic, and they're not. They're likely not, and we're giving our power away, following another agenda without even realizing it, right? And in some cases, this leads people to completely give up, because you're just like, well, I am powerless, right? What can I possibly do? You fall into depression, or worse, right? Suicidal ideation. So this does show that we can flip this around by rising up and taking our power back. Like, we need to hold people accountable, and we need to hold ourselves accountable. And it starts there, of holding ourselves accountable for how our actions impact the whole. That's the side of, we're all connected in oneness. We're all connected in oneness, and nobody gets away with impacting the whole without having to answer for it on some level, each of us. So, but this is where our attention is, conscious awareness, where where we're releasing this energy. So, but at the heart here, we find a very strong connection and a very strong pull and resonance, right, in that heart space of reconciliation, the lovers, right, of bringing it back and devoting ourselves to bringing it back to center. And we talked about this yesterday, the unity beyond polarity, and now it's here, right? It's here to be seen for what it is, and we have the choice to act on it. And it really depends on how we interact with what we come to learn, what we realize about ourselves and about our role in all of this. So, but this is showing that when we're focused on what we don't have, that we're focused on and being emotionally reactive, giving our power away, following another agenda, and then we're rooted in this kind of authority or lack of authority, or giving our power away without even realizing it. We're going to find ourselves really, and here's our 7. They keep coming up. Here's our 7 of Cups. It's not a great outcome, but at least with it being upright, there is the fall from grace that this represents, and it's sobering, and it's the temptation is to go back into escapism or the intoxication of the delusion, but the sobering realization and the divine intervention that the 8, right, the new beginnings that represents, are very substantial, but it will lead us through the swamp. That's just all there is to it. And not everybody wants to be able to pull themselves out of the swamp. You remember in the Never-Ending Story, right, when they go through the swamp of sadness and he loses Artex, right? Not everybody is able to get out of the swamp. And remember we just talked about how, the worst end of it is giving up, right? The falling into depression, feeling like you can't take your power back. So we'll still go through this process. The waters of delusion, the cloud of intoxication, right? The wish to escape into fantasy. And the idea that the success is in fact illusory. Keep that in mind, please. Okay. And I'm not saying that they're not real wins and they're not real progress, but what a way to keep people from actually standing up and taking their power back for real than to give fake and false promises or fake and illusory successes. So, but there's such a light here, is the realization of these false promises. This is where we can find the light in this outcome. It's very sobering, right? And like I said, every time you pull back a layer, every time you realize how entrenched in the swamp you really are, it is sobering, and not everybody is going to be able to pull themselves out of it. But I do feel very confident that if you're here with us right now, that you are capable of doing so. And if you're a starseed and a light worker, it's your job to find your way out of this, right? But it's a choice as well. It's not a just because you're designated these things doesn't necessarily just give you carte blanche to just, like, again, be completely focused on yourself. It needs to be given. It needs to be given to the collective in everything we do is meant to be for the whole in some ways, and not collectivism in in that negative Borg type of Aquarian way. So some guidance here to help us along our way as we embark on this. Number one, the Three of Forces, and we have the Condor, so the bird's nest. When it's reversed, right? It will seem like a loss here. That again, there's a lot of this idea that this seems like a loss, and we experience a loss in some way. And with the full moon, it's likely going to be an experience of loss of our own ego, or some aspect of our ego, or some aspect that we thought was really good, but is actually. I'm watching somebody creep by my house. Which is very bizarre. And but there is something to be said for this, and it's very much connected to that Seven of Cups too, even though this is the three, because it's reversed, right? So you think about reversing this card, everything spills out of the nest, right? You're not necessarily expanding space or creating a place for something new, as much as, you know, everything gets dumped out and you're like, now what? Well, it's important that you recognize that this separation or this reduction or this reorganization, in terms of, our home, or the space in which we create, the space in which we grow, whatever that means, there may be distancing between you and loved ones. That's also part of the Queen of Keys, is that reverse, like some sort of emotional distancing from someone in your life that you have identified as an authority or somebody you feel safe and secure with. It's important to realize that we let go of the old, rein in our plans, and try a new direction, even though it's going to feel like that this separation and reduction and literally emptying out and turning over of our very livelihood could be it's very strong, right? And it's such a propensity and potential to go back into those fantasy lands in order to bypass this work. Be conscious of your options. Be very courageous in your choices, okay? And some, it's part of this experience, and a lot of it possibly is going to feel like a loss at first. Because everything's getting dumped out. And so this time of loss can really lead to personal freedom, which is very Andromedan, right? So maybe facing the disappointment of those that you've promised more than you can actually deliver, for instance. True freedom comes from accepting that responsibility and making sure that you can make changes based on that, right? That's real freedom and transformation. The freedom to transform. Like, you don't want to stay in the same old, identity forever. I mean, that's not growth or evolution. So this is showing, like, the reversal is, it's going to seem like that there's distancing, there's a separation, that there's a loss, but with the Condor, it allows us to, speaking of bird's nest, right? You don't have to be in the nest necessarily. You want to fly. You're too enmeshed in the situation. Take a step back and see it. So this talks about how we've lost perspective, right? And too stubborn to let go. Boy, that keeps coming up too. The stubbornness of that Princess of Swords. Stubborn when she's reversed. She's very stubborn. And she'll use all of her logical sharpness to do something about that, and really cut people down. We need a new, fresh perspectives. We're too close to really discern it properly. So take a step back. You're too immersed in the situation. And if you're not fully immersed in working on we often think that if we're not like fully immersed in working on the problem, that we're not doing anything. And that is not true. Sometimes you have to take a step back and get that much larger perspective in order to actually be very effective. And true detachment is objective compassion, right? That doesn't mean you don't feel for people, that you don't care about them, that you don't necessarily want them to succeed or be part of their healing process. But if we're like completely face right here, you don't see the full picture. And this is what it's showing us, because I think that a lot of the loss of power right now of people in our life, or us feeling that way, is because we're so close up to it that we feel like the loss that is very real. And this is part of the full moon dynamic, is it's very real, and we have to be willing to let go of something. That's part of the full moon too, is the releasing. And when we are too up close, then we don't see it from the larger perspective, how it really is working against us or is truly holding us back. So that's something to consider. And when it comes to feeling where our power is, this is really very simple with the grouse and the king of forces, which is it's time to get back into the rhythm of the natural world. And you have to actually do something in order to align with the natural rhythm and pulse. So dancing and drumming, whatever it is, right, is just showing you that there's actual practices. And the grouse lives on the ground, by the way. I mean, there's a lot of birds in this reading, and when we talk about late Libra with the sun and even Mars there at this point, that it's very connected to that transcendent perspective of the big picture, where you're not so hyper focused on which side of the scale you're on. You're seeing the whole thing. The grouse is very much on the ground, right? And so again, rhythm, being connected to the rhythm and the pulse of the planet, of the mother, right? And that's our first connection to rhythm, is the heartbeat of the mother. So getting in connection to the heartbeat of the great mother, right? Of the planet itself, and all of the pulsation and rhythm of all life, right? Getting in touch with that very directly through some sort of practice. And of course, we want to be the king of forces. That is somebody who has this calm influence, because they are completely connected to the natural world. Their power and their authority comes from their connection to the natural world. And so, but it does require that feet on the ground, actually doing the things. And so in terms of flipping this waterfall around and actually harnessing the really strong energy of our emotions and our feeling-based intuitive nature, which is the moon, right? And how powerful that internal landscape actually is. Our feelings, our intuition, our gut, right, is all very powerful, and can shape the landscape. But we have got to get in touch with the natural rhythm of the landscape first, before we can have any hope of really harnessing the full power of our intuitive and feeling-based skill set and existence, right? Our very nature. So this is showing us where it can go if we don't necessarily do anything, especially at the heart of things being a very strong and very devoted commitment to this reconciliation. But if we don't feel in our power, if we don't feel confident in ourselves and in our resources, whatever they are, and we don't take if we don't take the initiative to really, from one to be transcendent, but also on the ground at the same time. And we'll talk about this. This is very much part of the astrology for today as well, with the moon and its connection to Pluto specifically. We've got to be able to exist in two places at once. And I know this is the most exhausting part of this journey. This is what everybody says to me. It's exhausting to have to straddle the spiritual and the material. And I know, but our job is to do that because we're eventually coming together, right? We're bringing the spiritual into the material. That's what the alchemical transmutation is. And so the lovers is at the heart. The alchemy of the universe is about doing that, right? It's about bringing the spiritual into the material and vice versa. It is about the squaring of the circle. So let's look at the astrology, actually, since we're talking about that, and see what we got going on for not just the full moon, but all of the astrology for today. So let's look at here. Now we already looked at that. That's fun. There we go. So we're gonna exit out of here. We're gonna look at our full moon chart for today. One day I'll get access to Astro Gold, and that will be a great day. One day I'll do that. So, all right, guys. The fire's okay for now. So here we are with today's reading, or today's astrology. And before we get to the full moon, because it's happening like any minute now, we're going to go back in time a little bit and look at what the moon was doing before we got to this point. So last night, let's look at last night, because we can get an idea of like maybe what was transpiring for us overnight. So we find 1:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we're looking late last night into early this morning as these moon transits are making connections to Mars and Jupiter and Pluto. Okay, so remember, these are all direct now. You can see it. Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto, all direct. Mercury direct. What's still retrograde is Neptune and Chiron and Uranus, but these two are going to be stationing direct before the solstice. So there's more to come in that realm. So first, the moon is in a sextile to Jupiter in Aquarius, and we find ourselves with Jupiter now moving direct in Aquarius, right? Every opportunity that we can take as a training exercise in our ability to really hold and harness the full natural power of the universe, essentially, right? Aquarius is the power that moves through the collective. It is the lightning bolt, right? That it's the laser beam that moves through, the entire fractal, or the entire geometric pattern, right? Each of us is a node in this pattern, and that's the Leo energy. Each of us shining brightly, right? Just like a star is, our sun is a star, and then Aquarius as the star is the collection of all of the stars in a galaxy, in the universe. It is the full picture here. So when the moon in Aries, right? Aries, the lamb, us as a subjective experience, I am that I am, right? The ego consciousness, the full actualization of who we are, the potential for what we could be all within us, the potency of that. The moon in Aries, right, making a sextile. There's that 6 again. There's that 60-degree angle, that reconciliation of opposites that is harmonious. There is a sense of inner fulfillment that we have been potentially feeling, right? That's the whole thing about Aries. The mastery of Aries is that all of it exists within us, and realizing that it all exists within us. We have the inner fulfillment that we can apply to and invest in this Aquarian nature with Jupiter, expanding on it, advocating for it, being our benefactor, giving us the resources of all types of resources, and representing our training, right? Our universal training. Every opportunity, everything that happens is an opportunity for training, right? That is brought forward to us. And so it's like when we realize that everything that we need is within us, right? On an intuitive level, on an emotional level, in our subconscious, when we have this inner fulfillment, we can apply this, we can invest this, and vice versa, right? Jupiter, as the giver of resources, of the good fortune and abundance, also invested into us on an emotional, personal level, an intuitive level. Again, these resources provide a sense of inner fulfillment. And so we have we can go in any direction from this point, because everything we need is already within us. And when we invest that into a situation that is providing every opportunity for us to really become a disciplined bearer of the water, that is Aquarius, right? A disciplined master of the natural world. This is incredibly powerful, letting us know that it's all already here, and that allows us to expand out there into the world and be a masterful water bearer, right? And Jupiter is always giving you, as long as you're on the side of Jupiter, Jupiter is going to give you what you need, right? Is going to support you, is the defender of the collective value system. But if you are not on board with what the collective belief system, value system, philosophy, religion, whatever, the spirit of the law, if you're not on board with that, Jupiter is going to, Jupiter has no problem just striking you dead with that thunderbolt, which is carried by Aquila, the eagle, which is in the constellation of Aquarius, by the way. So there's this direct connection here with Aquarius and Jupiter. Anyway, this was really a powerful moment, showing that we have everything within us. And then from there, the moon comes into an opposition almost immediately with Mars. Mars in conjunction with Spica. Mars in conjunction with Arcturus, right? The brilliance of the riches and the wealth that we gather in order to give, right? To be of service. And also Arcturus, right? The wisdom of how to be in harmony with the universe, down to a design level, sacred geometry, ley lines, ancient civilizations and how they were crafted, things that are as basic for Arcturian starseeds as being interested in architecture, interior design, feng shui, all of those types of really very hands-on vocations that have to do with designing spaces and designing reality to be in balance, and also the transmission of that information and that knowledge. That's a big part of the Arcturian signature as well. So Mars putting all of that really dynamic Aries energy, right? Mars would prefer to be in Aries, but is in a situation where it's applying all of that warrior dynamic energy into diplomacy, and into giving, and into service, and into transmission of knowledge, is very warrior-like, very ambitious, very courageous, and very thrusting forward with all of these things. So it's kind of almost just like, take it, I have it all, here it is, it's all out there, and I'm going to very forcefully put it out there. That's definitely Mars in general. So good thing that it's in Libra, because it kind of holds back. It's at its detriment in Libra, so it's not nearly as thrusting out and actualizing as it normally is. Now its connection to Aries is very interesting, because it's almost, those oppositions provide attention, right? You find the fulcrum of the balance of the seesaw, or like tug of war. But, Mars is just like, oh yeah, I remember, berries? So while we are being impacted by the influx of spiritual energies, right? And it's like our own essence and our own subconscious, right? This is really with the dreams. It's like blown inward by the wind, like our mind is translucent, and the spiritual energy comes in and shapes us, and it's like a cornucopia. That's the Sabian symbol, blown inward by the wind, the curtains of an open window, right? We are the open window. So it's important to be careful about this stuff too. I have mediumship in my immediate family, and one of my nephews is he's very young, but he's a very strong medium, and it's coming. He's really getting impacted right now. So you have to be mindful. If you have young people or children in your vicinity who have these gifts, it's important that they learn boundaries so that they are not impacted in a negative way because they're so open and susceptible. So, but you can feel it. It's been coming in. And so the opposition with Mars is the courage and the authority. Mars does present an emperor-like authority and a very strong warrior nature of almost defense, but in a way that's like, yes, by the way, let's put this energy towards developing a new capacity, a special capacity, a third wing on the butterfly, so to speak, a tripod that allows us to be balanced in order to be balanced, to be secure, to have the fulcrum, right? So it's important that we realize that we are being impacted by all kinds of energies right now, and in the best way possible. Certainly, it's a influx of energies that will mold us and shape us in plenty, but we also have to be aware of not being so totally open that we are influenced in a way that gives our power away. And so Mars is just like, here, I'm going to act on, we can all act on this new capacity that's coming forward that allows us to find the midpoint, the fulcrum. And Mars is very comfortable in Aries. It's its home territory. So of course it's going to be like, I know what it feels like to allow this energy to come through me and to influence, right? To be moved, right? To be moved by the spirit. And that's a beautiful thing, but we also have to make sure that there's something there that can hold that. And it's going to feel, it's important that we know where that is while things outside of us potentially are falling away. And there always is that infusion of something that is a fantasy as opposed to reality. So that's something to keep in mind as well with these influx of energies that are coming in. So many people are getting a lot of information, they're getting influence, they're being inspired, but they're also some, especially young people and children, they're just so much more aware and sensitive and awake. And we all were as children, but right now, especially, they're being bombarded. So it's important that they are protected and they know how to protect themselves. And this is exactly what Mars is able to take an authority with right now and help balance that out. Now, when it comes to the next aspect, so this is still overnight, right? So this is really explaining a lot of what's come through. And I got the message first thing this morning that like my nephew was like having, visitations and like really palpable, right? Coming into physical form, knocking things over, footsteps through the house, that kind of stuff. And so we need, it's coming in, but we also need to stand in our own power so that we are not taken over or influenced in a way that is against our best interests. So when the moon came into a square, right? First thing this morning, overnight, comes into a square with Pluto, right? This is also in conjunction with the dwarf planet of Eris, which is out even further than Pluto, right? Eris is the goddess of chaos and discord. This particular degree of Aries that she has been sitting at for a really long time. So if, 500-year orbit around the sun, so she's staying in like the degree of Aries for a really, really long time. This is about the possibility of gaining experience at two levels of being, right? In the physical, material, and in the spiritual. So the moon is coming and meeting that point through chaos, right? Through chaos, we are gaining experience of two levels of being. So because the chaos is kind of that spot that there's it coming from what is going to what will be, and there has to be this like mix up in chaos. And of course this is Pluto all day, the destructive element that leads to the fertility of something new growing. But the moon, there's a certain amount of faith that is involved with where the moon is in a square to Pluto. And one can truly experience what we truly deeply believe we can experience, whatever that is for us. And the possibility for existing in both places at once is very high. And the square to Pluto is having the friction of the very real destruction of our society right in front of us, right? Pluto doing what Pluto does. And so the friction there is where we lean in and we grow. We grow so much from this moment. And then the moon comes into the full moon conjunction, 27 to 28 degrees of Aries and Libra, right? So there's that. So that is really, there's no more real major transits once this full moon is already, and it's already hit, right? This was already happening. We're looking at 11:40 right now, a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So this full moon has already happened. And so, regardless of where you are in the world, pay attention to what is coming through, how it's processing through you, how it is really stimulating your expression and sustainment through this recognition that we are all inseparable from each other, that we're all, allow it to give you a sense of inner assurance that we are not alone in this process. But it also means that we have to take responsibility for ourselves as we are all connected to each other. And if we don't protect or shield ourselves or whatever, if we're not aware of the influx of energies that are coming from every direction, it's still going to influence us, and it's still going to influence our decisions, and it's still going to influence our behavior. So it's our responsibility now, especially light workers and starseeds, and even if you don't identify with either of those things, the fact that you're here says that you are on this journey of awakening in general. And it's our responsibility to be hyper aware of how everything affects the whole, but also not to lose hope, right? And to have faith that we can experience what we truly believe we can experience. It's going to there's a lot of friction involved with that, though, when we have to live through the very real, very physical, material destruction of our reality and our social order as well. That is definitely what Pluto represents. And of course, that has been, a controlled demolition in one way for so long, especially since Pluto went into Capricorn in 2008. That was the beginning of the controlled demolition, this slow burn. It was coming regardless. And so we all have to be very aware of where our information's coming from. This is not new, but it's now taken up a notch in some ways. And we also have to be willing to give criticism and critique, and to be able to call people out as well. And so this full moon is going to be encompassing all of these wonderful themes right now. And then we have the rest of this lunar cycle to go through. So see what needs to go and needs to be released in terms of this, in terms of how you feel about yourself, how you feel about your subjective experience, and how it has an objective reality to it, or certainly an objective experience of the whole. And we all need to be really very real with ourselves about that, and move forward from there. And then we have the rest of this lunar cycle as the moon now officially is in its waning phase, and so the light will then start to diminish, and we will kind of go back into our subconscious. The subconscious will get darker, it will get more embedded, it will probably be a little bit more difficult to see things clearly in that way. And so right now is the time to see it clearly and to consciously release whatever is going to hold us back from finding our stillness in the storm, whatever that means to us. So my friends, I'm going to leave it there for today. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. I really encourage you to consider subscribing, liking, sharing, commenting on this video at any point that you feel so moved, because it does really make a difference. It does get recommended to other people on their feed. It does grow the community. It does grow the awakening process. You know, it's happening. It's been happening, and it continues to happen. And so also, if you're interested in a reading or energy work to support your process, you can book through catalystenergies.net. That's in the description box below. And it's also, you can reach out through email. That's in the description box. And of course, you can stay in touch through Telegram and Facebook in terms of social media, where I post other videos that I find interesting or inspiring, other posts, all that kind of, you know, what social media is supposed to be for, is staying in touch and communicating. So if you're feeling, you know, if you're feeling interested in that, you can do that as well. So I hope that you are having a wonderful and insightful full moon, and let's you know, stay in touch. Let me know how it's going for you if anything comes up. If you want to support this work, you can also go over to Subscribestar. That's linked in the description box as well, and you can become a subscriber. And soon there will be added benefits for subscribers that I'm going to be getting to very soon. So we'll be together tomorrow for the Daily Medicine transmission. Have a wonderful day. I love you guys. Thank you so much for being here. God bless you. I will see you tomorrow.